Darkness falls inside the GM Studios halls. Tabletop games where nightmares creep, in a realm where sanity is lost and weak. Welcome to the abyss where dreams shatter. Inside the GM studio, nothing else matters. Blood and chaos, the dark arts unfold. In the realm of role-playing, where legends are told.
Happy holidays, everybody. We are back with a side question episode and a little bit of a frog in my throat, and inside the GM studio where we field questions from the throngs of idiots on the internet. I am your host, David.
I'm Matt.
Yeah, so forgive my little bit of hoarseness, but I'm going to get right to it and roll this die. My cat loves it, and I get a 4.
4, okay.
Okay, it's not for you.
This one, never mind. This post has been deleted by user. Let's do that again.
11.
11.
She wants to roll a crit, bro. She's like, roll it.
All right. This one comes from Foul Knavery on our Ask Game Masters with the title, Got Any Advice for a Rusty GM? I'm thinking about running a new campaign next year, and I'm a bit rusty. I haven't run a game in close to 2 years, and I haven't played in a game for 6 months. I'm not looking for any system-specific info, just general GM advice from a GM's perspective and a player's perspective. I have probably 10 years experience, but I've grown a lot the past couple of years and can see a lot of flaws in what I used to do. So I just want to take in whatever advice I can get with new eyes. I'm pretty sure the campaign is going to be an underground / dungeon focused game. There will be factions in different sections of the dungeon, like mad scientist chambers, gemstone caverns, and underground grotto, etc. Anything that you have to, any information you may have will help.
I suspect this is something that a lot of us that used to run games a lot and kind of haven't done so in a while for a confluence of likely adult reasons have come up against at some point or another. It's nice to hear somebody that has a little bit of humility about things instead of just being like, I've been GMing for like 20 years. Like, yeah, but when was the last time you did it, right? Because like most things, running a game or even playing in a game is a muscle. It gets stronger the more you use it. And if you don't use it, it will atrophy. A couple things off the top of my head that that I know that when we started playing again, in particular when we were doing online, which is a completely different animal, that I had to recalibrate toward was, one, first of all, don't be too hard on yourself, right? Players are pretty forgiving, at least players that I've known. They're mostly, as we always say, they're just happy to play in a game as opposed to no game. So don't beat yourself up too much about things. Also, don't overextend yourself. It's just like going to the gym. You're not going to, like if you used to work out a lot 5 years ago, you're not going to go and put the same amount of weight on the rack that you did the last time you worked out. Like, you're going to ease back into it. The same goes for GMing, whether it's depth of character for NPCs, plot twists, complexity, how many open quests you have. Keep it really simple to begin with. Just have things be fairly straightforward. If they end up being a little cliche, a little tropey, that's better than you being too ambitious and then just shooting your big toe off, because that will happen when you realize you're not accustomed to managing a table anymore. One of the keys that I would suggest is modern players, even just from a few years ago, seem keen to be more engaged than they used to be. And what I mean by that is outsource a little bit of the responsibility of the game to your players by involving them and pulling on their backstories and querying them as to what sort of things they might want to see in the game, what sort of plots are interesting to them. And you don't have to take that all into consideration, or I mean, take it into consideration, but you don't have to incorporate all of it, but allow it to kind of be a fertile ground. The goal is to get you to rediscover something that you used to really like. If you're framing it from some point of anxiety, then it's going to feel more like a responsibility that you're dreading instead of something that you're rekindling an affinity for. And so those would be kind of my main things off the top of my head. You got anything to add to those so far, Matt?
Yes, I would. Definitely the one that you brought up. I was kind of surprised that you brought it up because I was thinking about it. In newer terms these days, people call them their roses and thorns. Oh no, stars and thorns is what it is. It's kind of like a list that the GM wants to get from the players. Three things that you want to see happen or find in the campaign, and then three things that you really don't want in the campaign at all. Maybe because it's something that you find too tropey and you've gone through so many times that you don't want to deal with it again, or that it's just something like it, some people just don't like to get into some situations because it becomes uncomfortable. Like when your best friend wants to role play out a makeout session, and I'm just no, I'm not going to do that. I would say if you want to, and like David was saying, I was looking at some of the comments here to bring up later, and they're all pretty much saying the exact same thing that we are right now. There was one that at the very bottom here that Tuolgan said that creativity is a muscle and will atrophy if not used, in consistently. I believe that very much so. And with that, it's okay to take some weights off. To get back into it, which means grab a starter set, grab a little, starter box set, run that. And I wanted to ask you, David, do you think it's a good idea if it's been like a real long time? When I read this, I was like, oh, 6 months since he's played, and what was it, just a year or something that he hasn't GM'd? 2 years, sorry.
Yeah, I
2
was say
years.
if I said in
Wow.
a couple of years, yeah.
Okay, never mind. That was actually longer than I thought. I was thinking it might be a little bit shorter. But do you think it could be a good idea to run a couple one shots first instead of just jumping into a campaign if it's been that long?
Depends. He said he GM'd for a long time prior. So just, I'll keep using the physical health analogy. If you were someone that worked out a lot and you were in pretty good shape, then a couple of years, that's not all going to go away, right?
Right.
You don't need to go back to the start, things that might seem kind of trite at this point to you, or sophomoric, or even juvenile. So I wouldn't necessarily think that all of his skills would have evaporated, but just so much the management of them. So a one shot, if he was particularly anxious about it, might be the way to go. But I would suspect that this is more in his head than it is in his skill set.
Yeah.
Provided he doesn't just jump back into the deep waters of some more complex narrative devices, overlapping plot threads, multiple quest hooks, like a whole rogues gallery of NPCs that are all have like well fleshed out backstories and motivations and everything. It just kind of follows the axiom of good writing, one of which is limit your scenes players. Like, don't think about it. Think about it like a play. And any scene in D&D, any scenario, the PCs are essential characters, presumably, unless you're breaking it up into like some characters are over here and some characters are over there, which that's kind of like a mid-tier GM thing. He probably can still do that okay if he's only been out the game a couple years. But generally speaking, novice DMs, you want to say like don't split the party, have all of your party members like getting all the same information and interacting. But when it comes to NPCs, it's just like a movie set or a play. Try to really think hard about who's in the scene because you're paying them to be there. And if you're paying someone to be there, you damn well better be using them in the scene. And if they're not getting used, then cut them out of the scene. Just
Hmm.
don't have them there. It makes fewer hats that you have to wear. You have four or five PCs, and you have two or three NPCs. You have to switch back and forth between their personalities, their motivations, their dynamics with one another, with all of the PCs and everything. This can get laborious, right? It's just not all that tenable for purposes of role playing. And the same thing goes with other types of encounters, right? Don't have big rooms full of traps where there are a variety of multi-component traps that the PCs are having to navigate. Just have traps be pretty simple and straightforward. Same thing with combat encounters. Don't have a giant horde of enemies that there's like five different enemy types that you have to run, and they all have a variety of different powers. Like, no, just kind of keep it simple. They're all goblins, and they all have like basically the same basic attack, and there's four of them, one for each PC. And so then you don't need to add any more complexity, having things like, environmental phenomenon that the PCs can interact with, and all of that. That stuff is fun and spices up combat, but it's also more maintenance. So just try to be more thoughtful about that. Another thing that occurred to me while you were talking was the one of the biggest things that it took me to getting used to again was, as the GM, you're talking a lot,
Hmm.
and and you're filling a lot of dead space, and you're keeping the plot moving. If your players haven't played in a while and they're not super engaged, then that might fall to you to kind of keep the game moving. But again, if you do what Matt said, which is kind of get some sense from them about the things that they're gonna, want to chew on, and the things that they're kind of, I think you should always be putting some things in your games that players, like if you're talking about like in the world, like of the game, might not want to see, because you want to mix things up. But if it's just like this trope is really played out, I'm tired of the we meet in a tavern
Hmm.
scenario. I'm tired of the initial fetch quest. I'm tired of like the Machiavellian noble that like, then listen to that, incorporate it, try to think of the way you can spice it up without totally turning a well-worn archetype on its head. Just try to think of a few different ways that you can make it different. Like, you don't need to get away from archetypes, but if they're seeming tropey or cliched, try to spice them up in a way that might seem a little more fresh and different. So the biggest tip I can give you about filling that space is to try to calm down, speak slowly, so that you will speak deliberately. If your players are quiet and they're sitting there and they're kind of waiting for you to like, set the scene and set the action, you might feel a little bit of pressure. And if you feel pressure, you'll be nervous. And if you're nervous, people tend to speak fast when they're nervous. And that creates it goes against what it is that you're trying to do, which is the faster and the louder you typically speak, the less people are likely to pay attention to what it is that you're saying. But when you speak slowly and thoughtfully, choosing your words carefully, even occasionally allowing maybe a few breaks of silence while you gather your thoughts or think about things, and the players will be more engaged. And just be aware that you still need to make space for the players and not talk for, say, 10, 15, 20 minutes at a time, but give the players the relevant information. If you speak slower, you'll catch yourself being redundant. You'll catch yourself like trying to be overly flowery with your
Hmm.
descriptions. Instead of erring on the side of economy, the players have the who, what, where, when, why, and how of the whole nuts and bolts of the scenario. Throw them in and allow them to do some stuff. Try to get them into the action as early as possible in the game, and you're better positioned. Once that energy level rises, players become more engaged. If they start passively and you encourage the passivity by speaking through to them in rapid fire for long stretches with lots of exposition and all of this, then it kind of doesn't get them engaged, and or keeps them disengaged, I guess. And doesn't leave them leaping at the opportunity to get involved in the game. But so that's the idea is if you don't assume too much responsibility and you kind of implore your players, even not necessarily ahead of the game, but like in the early stages of the game, then they feed off your energy and excitement to be there, and then you feed off theirs, and then
Hmm.
you have a virtuous cycle where the game kind of spirals and gets interesting really quickly. So, um, yeah,
I know I say this a lot about, especially when it comes to like new groups. If you're starting a new group with people that you're not exactly, familiar with, could be just somebody that you met at work or whatever. Or in this situation where you are maybe coming back to a group that you guys haven't played together in a very long time, session zero is always a good time.
mhm,
It's a good time. It's a great idea, and it could really help if it's been a really long time to help you kind of get back in the flow of things.
yeah,
Like with us, how we're starting a brand new campaign from a TPK, but we've played together for so long that we could kind of just jump right into it. When
yeah.
it comes to new people, and when you come back from a long break, a session zero is a really good thing to do, especially finding out your new players or even old players, maybe they've changed a little bit in play style or
Yeah.
what they're looking for in a game. So this really helps out.
Yeah, it just helps calibrate. Like session zeros are a great way to kind of get out those jitters in a low stakes
That's a
environment.
great way to say that it's like a calibration.
Yeah, it's so to me it kind of it's I've noticed this more frequently in recent years when it comes to dating. People will often before they go on a first date with someone, they'll want to do like, like a short video chat.
Hmm.
And it's almost like you kind of get those first date jitters out of the way, you know the person a little bit, and then, you're ready to meet in person, and you're a little more relaxed. You forecast a little bit what's to come, and I would suspect that that probably is the same for a session zero because you can go, okay, there's some information I can give the players that ahead of the game that would frame the first session. And it'll also cut back on your need for long exposition to give them the whole backstory and the whole everything and yada 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 yada. But if you know something about the characters' backstories, they know something about the world and the key players or some information that's not going to ruin the plot. But they come into the game with it, then you can start with a dynamic scenario that gets them right involved in the thick of the adventure, and then like I said, things hopefully kind of build from there, and you're a little less apprehensive about being rusty. Yeah,
I think that's all I got. I was looking through, like I said, I was looking through these comments, and they're all saying the same thing that we are this time around. Um, so I got nothing unless you got anything there, David.
I think the important thing is just to, again, like I emphasized at the start, just try not to be too hard on yourself. I mean, obviously prep, but
Mm,
as we're always alluding to on the show, don't over prep, right? Make sure
yeah.
that you have enough for that like initial session. And if you're a, veteran GM, then you should be familiar with kind of how to get a plot hook with your inciting incident, how to build tension, how to involve the players, and have a real dynamite cliffhanger that gets everybody excited to kind of come back. Think about it as like an amuse bouche for the campaign. You're just trying to get the flavor in the players' mouths so that they're hungry for something more. You don't need to get right back into your previous GM chops
Mm.
because uh, that recalibration sometimes requires a reassessment. I know that I'm doing it. We're coming from a level 7 campaign and going back to a level 1 campaign, and it's like I'm trying to go, okay, like let's not, like when a campaign ends in a TPK, everybody's like the stakes are really high, right? And you're like at a high drama moment, otherwise it wouldn't be challenging. Um, but when you start a new campaign, you basically go right from high energy, high stakes, like characters with high capabilities, to the antithesis of that. And so you cool off a little bit. and not have an expectation that it's going to be the same thing that you jumping back into the same thing that you used to do, because you'll build back up to that quick enough.
All right. Well, then I think that's going to be all for this one. Should we just leave it with a good night?
And good luck.